Some of you may remember where you were when you first heard Nat King Cole sing Unforgettable. But on one spring night in 1956, Nat was in the middle of performing when he looked out into the theater and saw something that made his blood run cold. Men moving toward him, fast, angry, one of them carrying a gun. What happened in the next 60 seconds didn't just test Nat's courage. It revealed a choice about who he would become in the face of hatred. And that choice would echo through the rest of his life. April 10th, 1956, Birmingham, Alabama. The Birmingham Municipal Auditorium was packed that Tuesday evening. Over 4,000 people filled the seats. This being Birmingham in 1956, there would be two shows that night. An early one for white audiences, a late one for black audiences. That was just how things were done, even though Nat himself had been born 90 miles away in Montgomery. The lights dimmed. Behind the curtain, the all-white Ted Heath Orchestra waited, hidden from view. That was the arrangement. When the curtain rose, Birmingham's mayor welcomed everyone. The crowd cheered. Nat King Cole was one of the biggest recording artists in America. Mona Lisa. Too young? Nature boy? His voice was everywhere. Nat walked onto that stage with his signature ease, confident, relaxed, that smile that made audiences feel like they were in safe hands. He settled at the piano. The first song went beautifully. The audience applauded. Then the second. The evening was unfolding exactly as it should. And then Nat began his third song, a gentle tune called Little Girl. His voice filled that space like warm honey. The kind of voice that made you close your eyes and trust the moment. He had no idea that moment was about to shatter. Nat's eyes swept across the crowd as he sang. It's something performers do instinctively, reading the room, connecting with faces. That's when he noticed it. A man in the middle section stood up, not to applaud, not to leave, just standing, rigid, purposeful. Then another man rose, then two more. They weren't moving casually. They were pushing past other audience members, coming down the aisles from different directions. 4 men, moving fast, their faces hard with something that wasn't appreciation. Nat kept singing. Years of training took over. The show continues no matter what. But his eyes tracked those men. People around them began to notice. A woman gasped. Others stood, confused, trying to understand what was happening. The music continued, but something in the air had changed. Plainclothes police officers scattered throughout the auditorium spotted the movement. They'd been warned there might be trouble. Tips had come in, threats. But until now, everything had seemed fine. What none of them knew yet was that this wasn't random. These 4 men belonged to the North Alabama Citizens Council, a Ku Klux Klan offshoot. Their original plan had involved 150 men from across the region. They'd intended to kidnap Nat King Cole off that stage in front of thousands of witnesses. The reason? Photographs of Nat with white female fans had been circulated, captioned with hateful lies designed to inflame fear and rage. To these men, Nat's success, his dignity, his crossover appeal threatened the segregated world they were fighting to preserve. The 4 men reached the front. They didn't hesitate. They rushed the stage. One of them lunged at Nat's legs, tackling him straight off the piano bench. Another grabbed his arms. They were trying to drag him off the stage, into the wings, away from the eyes of 4,000 witnesses. Nat hit the floor hard. His back struck the edge of the piano bench. The impact sent pain shooting through his spine. His hands flew up instinctively. The microphone stand crashed over, a metallic clang cutting through the rising screams. For a few terrible seconds, the stage became chaos. Plainclothes detectives rushed forward, pulling the attackers off Nat. But uniformed officers, not briefed on who the plainclothes men were, began trying to arrest everyone, creating a tangle of bodies and confusion. People in the audience were screaming. Some stood on their seats. Others ran for the exits, not knowing if more attackers were in the crowd. Behind the curtain, the Ted Heath Orchestra received a frantic signal. In desperation, they did the only thing they could think of. They began playing their national anthem. "God Save the Queen" rang out through that Birmingham auditorium while police wrestled with men on the stage. It took several minutes to restore order. 6 men were arrested. 4 would be charged with assault with intent to commit murder. Outside, police searched the attacker's car. Inside, 2 rifles, a blackjack, brass knuckles. They'd come prepared for far worse than what happened. But what happened next? What Nat chose to do next? That's what this story is really about. After the attackers were removed, after the broken microphone was picked up, after the scattered sheet music was gathered, Nat King Cole walked back out onto that stage. His back was hurting. His hands were shaking. He was still processing the shock of what had just happened, but he came back out. 4,000 people rose to their feet. The ovation that followed lasted 10 full minutes. The sound was overwhelming. Applause mixed with cheers, with sobs, with shouts of support. People were crying openly. Some were ashamed of what had happened in their city. Others were simply moved by what they were witnessing. 10 minutes. Nat stood there maintaining his composure, that dignity that defined him. When the noise finally subsided enough for him to speak, his voice was steady, calm, not angry, not bitter. "I just came here to entertain you," he said. "That was what I thought you wanted." A pause, the auditorium completely silent. "I was born in Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama." Another pause. "Those folks hurt my back. I cannot continue because I need to see a doctor." That was all. No condemnation, no rage, just facts, delivered with a grace that left people stunned. The next day, a reporter caught up with him at the airport. "How do you feel?" "I don't think I was hurt," Nat said quietly. "I was just in shock." Then he said something that would be quoted in newspapers across the country. "I don't think it was aimed at me personally." Here was a man who'd just been violently attacked, and he was trying to understand his attacker's perspective, trying not to personalize the hatred. "I didn't think I had an enemy in Alabama," he continued. "I do want to say I'm not mad at the soul. The people here in Birmingham were just great." That response, that choice to meet violence with understanding, it confused some people, angered others. But it was pure Nat King Cole. Not everyone appreciated Nat's measured reaction. Thurgood Marshall, the NAACP lawyer who would later become the first black Supreme Court justice, criticized Nat for performing at segregated venues at all. If stars like Nat refused these bookings, Marshall argued, the South would be forced to integrate faster. Others in the civil rights movement felt he should use his platform more aggressively, speak out more forcefully, show more anger. But Nat had his own understanding of how change happens, his own strategy. "I can't come in on a one-night stand and overpower the law," he told a reporter from Jet magazine. "The whites come to applaud a Negro performer like the colored do. When you got the respect of white and colored, you can ease a lot of things." He believed in winning hearts through excellence, through showing up. through being so undeniably talented that people had to reckon with their own prejudices, through letting his music speak truths that arguments couldn't. It was a different path from the direct action protests beginning to define the movement. Neither approach was wrong. They were just different answers to the same impossible question. How do you change hearts that don't want to change? What Birmingham did shift in Nat, though, was his willingness to speak more directly. He bought a lifetime NAACP membership. He sued hotels that refused him. He spoke more openly about discrimination. And 7 months later, in November 1956, he did something remarkable. The Nat King Cole Show debuted on NBC, the first major network variety show hosted by a Black American. Major stars appeared to support him: Tony Bennett, Ella Fitzgerald, Peggy Lee, Harry Belafonte. They came to prove that talent could overcome prejudice. The show was excellent. Critics loved it. Ratings were solid. But week after week, no major advertiser would sponsor it. They were afraid of Southern boycotts, afraid of controversy. When the show was canceled after a year, Nat didn't mince words about why. Madison Avenue is afraid of the dark. That was the invisible barrier he faced his entire career. Not always the violent hatred of men rushing stages, but the quiet discrimination that wore a respectable face and called itself business sense. The men who attacked Nat were convicted. 4 received 6 months in jail and $100 fines. Real money in 1956, worth over $1,000 today. It wasn't much punishment for what they'd tried to do, but it was something, an acknowledgement that violence wouldn't be tolerated, even in the segregated South. More importantly, the swift convictions sent a message. In many Southern towns during that era, white men who attacked black people faced no consequences. Birmingham's response suggested something was beginning to shift, however slowly. Nat finished that tour. He kept performing in the South throughout his career. He didn't let fear dictate his choices. That very night in Birmingham, after seeing a doctor, Nat returned to the auditorium for the 10 o'clock show. The performance for the black audience, he sang for them. He gave them the full show because he'd made a commitment, because people had paid their money, because that's who Nat King Cole was. He showed up. He did the work. He honored his audience, every audience. Some of you might remember that night. Maybe you read about it in the papers. Maybe you discussed it with friends, trying to understand how such a thing could happen at a concert in front of thousands of people. The Birmingham attack became national news. Life magazine, Time, newspapers coast to coast. For many Americans, it was a shocking window into the violence that black performers faced simply for doing their jobs with excellence. But for Nat, it was one night in a career full of obstacles most of us can barely imagine. He kept recording, kept performing, kept breaking down barriers, one song at a time. What made that night in Birmingham matter wasn't just the violence Nat survived, it was the choice he made afterward. He could have walked away bitter. He could have stopped performing in the South. He could have let hatred define him. Instead, he walked back onto that stage. He spoke with dignity. He refused to match violence with rage. And then he kept moving forward. Today, when we hear Nat King Cole's voice, that smooth, timeless sound, it's easy to forget the cost of the career that produced it. Every recording session where he had to prove himself again. Every performance where he had to maintain grace under degradation. Every smile while carrying the weight of being a pioneer. That night in Birmingham revealed something essential about who Nat King Cole was. When faced with men who wanted to destroy him, he chose not to become what they wanted him to be. Not angry, not defeated, not bitter, just himself, dignified, graceful, unbroken. He understood something that his attackers never would, that hatred diminishes the person who carries it far more than the person it targets, that responding to violence with more violence only creates more violence, that the real revolution happens in the space between what someone does to you and how you choose to respond. When you hear Unforgettable or Mona Lisa or any of his classics, remember the man who sang them. Remember that he chose grace over rage, presence over absence, dignity over bitterness. He chose to keep singing, and in that choice, in that stubborn, quiet, persistent choice to show up and be excellent and refuse to be diminished, Nat King Cole won something far more important than any argument. He won his own soul, and he showed the rest of us what real strength looks like. Not the strength of fists or weapons or rage, the strength of showing up tomorrow and being who you are, no matter what happened yesterday. That's a legacy that doesn't fade. That's a voice that stays unforgettable.